The VVN Music Podcast, Episode 8. Covering the veteran artists from pop, rock, soul, country, folk, and blues that influence today's music world, this is the VVN Music Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial by going to audiotrial.com/VVN. Hi, and welcome to Episode 8 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wink, and on today's show, we're talking with Michael Stanley, who has a new album on his own Line Level Records and has been the voice of classic rock in Cleveland for the past quarter century. But first, it's the thing we're loving this week. When I first heard that alt-rocker Ryan Adams was recording a track-for-track cover of Taylor Swift's album 1989, I thought it was a joke, but Adams has done it, and in spectacular form. Ryan has taken an album of hook-laden, finely crafted pop songs and turned them on their ear, slowing a song like Shake It Off down almost to a ballad that's very reminiscent of Bruce Springsteen's arrangement of I'm on Fire from the Born in the USA album. Blank Space is also taken to ballad territory, while Style becomes a rocker. Even the lesser tracks from the Swift album are given an angsty twist in what critics are describing as Taylor Swift via the Smiths. It was a daring move by Adams and one that has paid off. Not only are many critics loving the album, but so are the fans, including Taylor herself, who's been promoting the album via her social media accounts. As a matter of fact, the new Billboard Albums chart has it at number 7, one spot above the Swift original. A great album that confirms Adams as one of the most talented and innovative veteran artists on the scene today. Charles Connor may not be a household name from the rock and roll era, but the drummer certainly left his mark. Starting out in the 50s, playing for Professor Longhair, Smiley Lewis, and Guitar Slim, he would eventually drum for the likes of Little Richard, Lloyd Price, James Brown, Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson, and a host of others. Connor recently published his autobiography, Keep It Knockin', The Story of a Legendary Drummer, which is available in audio form on Audible.com. Now you can listen to it in the car, at work, at home, or anywhere you want with our free special offer. Just type in the address audibletrial.com/VVN to sign up for the 30-day free trial and receive your free audiobook. Plus, if that title isn't to your liking, they have over 180,000 others to choose from. Remember, that's audibletrial.com/VVN.
I'm waiting for the sound of a train this time of night, heading for a place where two hearts meet. The sound of your voice is just a whisper, baby, and all I need is the sound of a train.
Our guest today is singer-songwriter, musician, and radio personality Michael Stanley. Stanley started his career in the late 60s with his band Silk, who released one album on ABC before he went solo, recording 2 classic country-tinged solo albums. In 1975, he premiered the Michael Stanley Band, moving into the rock mainstream with a series of albums that charted through the mid-'80s and produced songs like He Can't Love You, one of the first songs played on the fledgling MTV, and My Town. After the breakup of the band, Stanley's career took a turn with him becoming the host of a show on Cleveland's WJW television and, in 1990, taking over the afternoon drive slot on the classic rock station WNCX, a show that he still does to this day. That didn't keep him away from music, though. In 2003, he started his own Line Level Records and has released 10 albums over the last 12 years, including his brand new one, And Then. We talked with Stanley from his home in Cleveland, Ohio. Your new album, and then originally had a release date, at least from what I had seen, of September 25th, but has that been pushed out for a couple weeks?
I'm not sure. I was thinking it was October 1st, but somewhere in that area.
Okay, because I had seen, I think it was on Amazon, they have it out as October 16th now, so I didn't know if things had changed or not.
I haven't heard that it has changed, but...
You know, you've been tremendously prolific over the last, over your whole career, but especially in the last 12 years. I think this is your 10th new album in that time. What's your drive, and where does all the inspiration come from?
The drive is, it's just, it's what I do. And, people say you need a hobby. Well, that's my hobby as well as my profession. So basically, it's just been a thing, and I've been lucky enough to still be inspired, to still have the desire to do it. Because if you don't, it's like pulling teeth, and if you do, it's a lot of fun most of the time. So it's just been one of those things where what I started out to do in this business was to be a songwriter. So I write songs and then try to put them down and see if anybody likes them.
You really do touch a wide variety of styles, from some out-and-out rockers to a number of really nice ballads on the album. You just seem to have a real talent for hitting on a lot of the subgenres of rock music. And is that from studying it over the years, or?
I think it's just from liking most of it. And the other thing is, sometimes I actually sit down and say, well, what this album should be, this album should rock all the way through. And then about halfway through the process, I get bored with that and say, like, well, no, I want to get mellow for a while, or I want to get something with a groove thing, or even a country thing or something. It's more a thing of what kind of piques my interest at the moment. And there's a lot of tunes that are still sitting here that haven't fit into anything yet. And every once in a while one of them slides into the next project because it didn't fit in the project before, or and that sort of thing. So I think that was kind of the I tend to call it eclectic. Other people call it schizophrenic. It might have made it hard to market what I do over the years, but it's just what keeps my interest in the thing.
Take me through the process that you have for making one of your albums. I know that you wrote, I believe it's 12 out of the 13 songs on the album.
Yeah.
Do you work with any co-writers at all, or are those completely your own compositions?
On the new album, they're all mine except for a co-write with one of the guitar players in my band, Mark Lee Shannon, a song called Sound of a Train. It's probably about 80% his song, and I just went in and cleaned up some things and did some lyrical rewrites and stuff, but the main gist of it's his. But I like writing with other people. For years I wrote with Bob Palander from the Michael Stanley Band, and it's been pulling teeth to try to get Bob to do some writing these days. He's real busy and doesn't live in the area anymore, so I can't even just go over to his house and browbeat him into it. But with writing with other people, it tends to take you down different roads, and that's a neat thing for me, especially like someone like Bob, who's a keyboard player, because there's things that he's going to come up with and feels that he's going to come up with that I just wouldn't come up with on my own, and it makes it more interesting for me, like, oh man, I can be part of a tune like that.
Well, one of the ways that I judge great songwriting and a great musicianship as far as recording is when I listen to an album for the second time. And when I go back and I listen to it and I go, yeah, I remember that song from the first time I heard that album. And then I know that there's some really great craftsmanship there. And this album really is full of that type of music. I mean, you mentioned Sound of a Train. That is a perfect example of one that the second time I heard it was, I remember this. Shifting Gears is the same, and a whole bunch of the songs on the album.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Your producer for the album is Bill Simzik, who you have worked with since all the way back with your original band Silk and on your first two solo albums. What is the chemistry that's kept you two as professional partners for so long?
I think, just a 50-year-old friendship, and the fact that we all started out sort of at the same time, and Bill was, he was my mentor. He got me into the business, and I learned to make records, watching him do it. He actually isn't the producer on these. I'm the producer, and Bill comes and does the mix and engineers the mix, because he lives in North Carolina and I live in Ohio, and I'm just putting these together as I go along, and then when I get this bunch of things that I think are tolerable and worth hearing, I turn it over to him and let him make it sound real good.
Where did you record the album? I know you have a home studio.
Yeah,
Is that where it was all done?
Yeah, in my basement, yeah.
You have an amazing, tight band with the Resonators.
Yeah, they're a good bunch.
How long have you had that group together, and how did you find such a great group of musicians?
Well, let's see, three of them are from MSB, Danny Powers, Tony Dobek, and Bob Palander. And sometimes Michael Gismondi also plays on the albums. He was the bass player in MSB. And the other guys, just, after MSB broke up, we just started putting various bunch of people together to see what worked. And this bunch that is here now is pretty much, I think the youngster in the band's been here about 19 years. So we've been playing together for a long time, much longer than MSB was together.
Who's the female vocalist that you have doing backing vocals?
Jennifer Lee. I've been singing with her since she was like 17 years old. We just have a really good chemistry vocally. It's just really fun to do those, and she's a great singer, and she can sing any style, so that works for me really well, because if I say, okay, we're going to do a country thing, or we're going to do a R&B thing, or we're going to just, balls to the wall rock, she has no problem with any of it.
She can really wail on a couple of those songs on the new album.
Yeah, she's great.
Any guests that you have on the album?
On this one, a gentleman by the name of Ed Kaner played some violin. Ed was in the band for a few years way back when. And Don Dixon did some background vocals. Don was he's a noted producer, REM and the Smithereens and those people, and a noted solo artist and writer on his own. And he lives relatively in the area, and just a wonderful guy. And any chance I get to corral him in to come in to sing it's really a lot of fun.
Now, this is being released on Line Level, which I think everything you've done has since 2003. Is that your own label?
It is my own label. Pardon the dog. My wife, my late wife, started it about 12 years ago, and it just sort of got out of hand. And we've done my albums, and we've done a solo album for Bob, and a solo album for Mark Lee Shannon. And we did a Christmas album with a lot of artists from the Cleveland area, and it's just been a nice venture.
Did you do that mainly to try and keep control over everything, or was it a case that the music business was starting to get kind of fractured up and it would be easier to work with your own label?
Yeah, both of those. I mean, on my days as a whatever the major labels are anymore, I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's a totally different business than when the Michael Stanley Band was, in its heyday. And I want control over what I do, and obviously it's harder to reach a bigger audience that way, but at the same time you get to do what you want to do, and hopefully it will find some ears to listen.
What are you doing as far as distribution now? I know that obviously the Michael Stanley Band and was big during the 70s and so forth. Are you working more on a regional level now as far as distribution, or?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm hooked up. My wife had set up a thing with Dean Sierra at It's About Music way back when, and so Dean does a lot of distribution for us, and have local distribution here, and the rest is pretty much the internet. It's that's the name of the game these days. I mean, anybody can find anything. Type my name or any artist's name into the thing, and you'll sooner or later, if you want to, find where you can get their stuff.
Any plans on putting it out on vinyl?
People ask that a lot. I don't think so, just because of the limited resources we have here. It would be interesting, but then again, I don't know what people actually do with them. I think they just take them and look at them. I don't think they actually play them. I don't know.
It's funny. All along, I've been under the impression that vinyl has been a niche part of the market, but the RIAA just came out with their mid-year report, and it doesn't match up as far as units sold, but as far as revenue, vinyl is showing to be about a third of CD sales now, and it just looks like it's a growing market, and you're seeing it at Barnes & Noble. But I agree with you. Is it for display purposes, or are people really playing it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I grew up a vinyl junkie, and it's nice that there's some sort of rebirth of the thing. And as I said, a bunch of people say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do it? So I probably should look into it. I think one of the main people who are doing vinyl these days is actually in this area, who got on the ground floor of that sort of rebirth of things. So I don't know. It's a possibility.
There ain't no denying the power of the big beat. Oh, well, turn right. Everybody get happy. Everybody come along. Raise your voices, raise your hands, and help us sing this song. Sing it all together now. Sing it all together now.
Let me just throw out a couple of the tracks from the album to you, and just kind of get your reaction on the inspiration and so forth. The first cut on the album, All Together Now, is just a fantastic opener, and I could see it being a great opener for when you play live.
Yeah, I think hopefully it will translate well to live. That's a funny one, because that song's 30 years old. I just happened to find it on an old cassette. Demo version of it, and I thought, oh yeah, I remember that. What happened? Why did that sort of fall through the cracks? And I thought, I think there might be something there. So I just did it, sketched it out in the studio and started working with it, and it was like, yeah, this is cool. It still works. So almost on every album, there's a song I find from way back when that somehow got passed over, or I didn't like then, but now it makes sense to me, and maybe it needs a little rewrite or something, but so that was fun to bring that one back from a long time ago.
You also seem on a number of your more recent albums to throw in at least one cover, which is the case on this one also.
Covers are cool. I mean, it's like I like great songs, and if there's I did a whole album of covers about 8 or 9 years ago. An album called the Farrago Sessions, and it was a lot of fun, and the guys in the band had a lot of fun playing on it. And if it's a way for me to just, if I can think of a different way to do the song, there's no sense, doing Yesterday and doing it like they did, But this was a song that, and the other thing is it's a way for me to maybe turn some of the people that are my fans on to somebody who they aren't familiar with, and they go, "Wow, where'd that song come from?" Well, I came from a band called Storyville, and David Grissom and those guys, and I think that's a neat song. Let me check those guys out, So that it's kind of the theory of it. I'm doing what I would like somebody to do with my stuff,
Somebody cheated. Somebody lied. They got you feeling like a mail-order bride. Don't speak the language you ain't in the club. Don't stand a chance. There lies the rub, and it is what it is, and really what it is a drag. The church ain't open, feel the snakes are back in the bag.
I love the track Snakes. I think it's a great rocker. And what was the inspiration behind that one?
That all came from the line in the chorus that church ain't over till the snakes are back in the bag. And I had years ago I had gone to one of those Pentecostal church, snake services, and it was just mind blowing. It was just completely nuts, and it always sort of stuck with me. And at the time, I was talking to somebody there at the service, and the line came up. Church ain't over till the snakes are back in the bag. It's kind of like, how long is the service? And well, that's how long it is. And it always stuck with me. So finally, I put it to good use.
It seems that you must do a little bit of journaling to keep all of these ideas somewhere until you get around to it.
Yeah, I think most writers do. I think most songwriters you'll find have a little notebook or something, or now you can voice memo onto your iPhone, and then you go back to it when you're looking for a subject matter or a title or an idea. And sometimes, you go, what in the world was I thinking? What does that mean? What is that? And other times you go, okay, yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, you can walk around. Most songwriters, good songwriters, are, they're observational. It's not always, about them. It's about what they're taking in. It's fun for me to go someplace and just, sit in the corner or watch things go on and watch people interact and hear things, and hopefully you can take some of that and turn it into some good music.
She rode out of VVN, took a left turn for the coast. Was never big on planning, or getting all that close.
The song Sweet Spot is the one, I won't say overtly country, but definitely country-flavored song that kind of takes you back to your country rock roots.
Mm-hmm. I've always loved country music. I mean, these days there's more rock and roll and country music than there is anyplace else. But I mean, I go back to the real old times. Porter Wagner and Dolly when she was young, and George Jones and Merle Haggard, and then on up through, and back to one of those seminal albums in my collection that just always, stuck with me was a really old, obscure Marty Robbins album, from like 1956, and it's just a great record. And so it's that thing of, when you grow up in the Midwest, you get hit with a lot of things. When growing up around here, there was the huge Motown thing coming out of Detroit, and there was country stuff coming up from Southern Ohio, and R&B from New York, and straight ahead rock and roll. And I think you see a lot of the guys that grew up in the Midwest, they pull from a lot of that stuff.
You mentioned at another point that, right, you feel that you were born, I believe, 1951. I was born in 1955, so I feel this quite a bit also, that rock music is kind of your life. It's what has been there from as far back as you can remember.
Yeah, well, I was actually born in, thank you for 51, I'll take that, but it isn't, I'm older than that. I was born in 48. And so when I was about 7, I guess, is when the whole rock thing started. My father happened to be in radio. He was the first all-night disc jockey in the United States, and he would just bring records home all the time, and throw them on my bed and go, here, check it out. And it was just tons of stuff. I mean, it was, country stuff. It was Miles Davis. It was, Etta James. It was, Chuck Berry. It was everybody. And I was in no way a music snob at that point. And it was like, if it was on vinyl, I was going to listen to it. I was going to listen to the A side and the B side and every cut on the albums, and just took it all in and sort of, said, well, I like this. I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe I have to be a little older to understand Miles, and that sort of thing. But it all made an impression, and as I grew up, so did rock and roll. And by the time I was in high school, that was when the Beatles and the Stones and everybody hit, and the whole thing of like, oh my goodness, you could actually be in a band. I don't know how you do it, but obviously people do. And so the timing was all pretty good for me.
He must have worked for a fairly progressive radio station that was allowing him to play that variety of music in the mid-'50s. I recently...
No, the great thing was it was a completely unprogressive station. It was like an easy listening station. And so they wouldn't have anything to do with anything other than, like Mantovani and Ray Conniff and that sort of thing. So all the records that the I don't know why the promo guys still brought them product and stuff, knowing it wasn't going to get on the air, but it would just get thrown in a big box and anybody who wanted could take it. And so literally every night he would, throw 2 or 3 albums and 10 singles on my bed. And it was so by the time I was 12, I had a huge record collection.
Now, you mentioned earlier the Marty Robbins album and some of the other artists here. Who else really influenced you as you got your start professionally in music?
Well, like I said, I think it was all of them. I mean, the ones that moved me originally were the pioneers of it all, the first class of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Chuck Berry and Elvis and the Everly Brothers and Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard and Fats Domino and all those people. And then, it sort of, it hit that period where, Bobby V and Fabian and Paul Anka took over for a while and things like that. But then, there's always still good stuff happening. It was just whether you could find it or not. And then, like I said, the whole English invasion and all that just kicked it up a notch. And it was the time when, that Ed Sullivan appearance by the Beatles, that launched 8 million garage bands, and it was fun. But it was one of those things like, how do you do this? Nobody knew. It wasn't like you knew anybody that did it. You just had to kind of figure it out on your own.
That appearance by the Beatles on Ed Sullivan was kind of my personal light bulb into rock and roll, because I was, 9 at the time, and I remember watching that and then grabbing my parents' car keys and going out in the car and trying to find Beatles music on any radio station at night in the country.
Exactly. Yeah, it was totally life-changing. It was just something that was so different at the time, and then you realize when in retrospect it wasn't all that different. They were channeling all the people they grew up with. There was a lot of Carl Perkins and a lot of Everly Brothers type harmonies and a lot of country and a lot of some R&B. I mean, people forget they did a lot of covers on their first few albums too.
Well, that's right. I recently interviewed Lloyd Price, and of course he had Lottie Miss Claudie in 1952, and it was like the beginning of white audiences really listening to rhythm and blues. And one of his comments was that the artists of today sometimes don't remember the artists that paved the way for them and who influenced them.
I think that's true. I mean, look at it. I mean, you got a, and it's not even back that far. You got a whole bunch of people that think that Soul Man was a Blues Brothers song. They don't know anything came before that, but that's the way it worked. I mean, when like the first Stones album is, I think, 80% cover songs, and it's all old R&B stuff. And, I thought it was just the span of the Stones, and then you realize, no, it's not. That's a Solomon Burke song, or that's a Muddy Waters song, or this. And so you work backwards. And I think, everybody from that period said that, all the Clapton and everybody on down, you just saw, what is this, and where did it come from? And then you do your homework and you see whether that's sort of where you want to hang out. It's great, and you still do it to this day. I mean, I still find things where, what's that? And that came from something, 40 years ago. Oh, that's cool. Let's go see what the original sounded like.
For the last 25 years, you've kind of been the afternoon voice of classic rock there in Cleveland on WNCX. So you're getting a chance to impart all of this knowledge that you have gained over the years. How did you come about to get into that?
Well, after the band broke up, I did television here locally for about 6 or 7 years. Excuse me. And then when that started to wane, just happenstance. Somebody at NCX, a gentleman by the name of Doug Podell was the program director at the time, and he asked me if I was interested in maybe doing an air shift. And I thought, well, this TV thing's winding down, and didn't look like anything was going to be happening full time with the music thing at that point. And so I said, I'll try this for a year or two. And I figure out what I want to do, and that was like 25 years ago.
Are you finding a lot of differences in the radio business now than where it was 25 years ago, or?
Oh yeah, sure. But it's so fragmented now. It's so it's so formatted. There's 8 billion different formats, and not a lot of cross-pollination there. And I'm amazed. It's a running joke with the station that one day everybody's going to wake up and collectively they're going to go, you know what, I don't want to hear Pink Floyd anymore, or I don't want to hear this, or you keep getting different audiences. You keep getting younger kids get turned on to something one way or the other, and all of a sudden, instead of listening to Foo Fighters all the time or whoever, which is a great band by the way, but they go back and go, wow, AC/DC, what's that all about? What's Zeppelin all about? And then they can, once again, just like we did with things, they can mine this and go, wow. And then if they go to somebody like those guys, and then they can trace it all the way back to, Lottie Miss Claudia, et cetera.
The unfortunate part is, and I agree with you on the fragmenting of the formats, some stations, it's practically, every hit from January to September of 1982, and that's it.
Yeah.
But oldies stations, not classic rock, but oldies stations have kind of given up on music pre-Beatles. And unless you are listening to a Sirius or some other streaming, it's very hard to hear those really early rockers these days.
Yeah, there was a station in town that had that market, and they went up to, I think, just about like Sgt. Pepper, and then that's where classic rock stations took off from there. But over the years, it was funny. We watched them sort of move up, and they go, oh, well, so they started playing the older things on our playlist, and some of the stations that were playing the newer things, that were playing the Pearl Jams and things like that, they started working backwards, and taking things from the other end of the classic rock thing. So and like you say, but the station, no, there's no place I can there's no place I can turn on in Cleveland and hear a Righteous Brothers song or an Everly Brothers song or Lloyd Price or Fats Domino or anybody that like that, and that's too bad because that's it's a gold mine of stuff.
You recently called rock music the great melding pot of music, and even though it's been declared dead numerous times, it still remains the biggest genre out there as far as music sales go. Where do you see rock music going in the future to keep it that way?
Well, I'm not sure what rock is anymore. You know what I mean? Everybody has a different definition of it, and it usually comes to a frantic head every time that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducts a new class, and they go, well, that's not rock and roll, and this is not rock and roll, and that's it. It's also incestuous, and it all came from so many different things. It's all just like rock did. It was just a melding of R&B and country, and that turned into something all its own. And I don't know. I always looked at it more from a standpoint of songs. Where are the good songs? I don't care what genre they're in. If it's a good song, it's cool. And some of them rock and some of them don't. And where it will go, what my grandkids will be listening to, I have absolutely no idea.
You're absolutely right about every year the argument comes out on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and people go, Neil Diamond shouldn't be in there, or NWA or something like that. And I go, well, if that's the case, go back to the very first and the second inaugurations in there. It was like, that means Sam Cooke shouldn't be in there. That means Fats Domino probably shouldn't be in there. And that means Aretha Franklin probably, because they're not strictly rock and roll. And the thing is that it's really what popular music has been since 1954 or 1955, not strictly rock and roll.
Yeah, people, it's a catch-all phrase, I mean, people say, what do you, what kind of music do you play? They ask me, somebody says, oh, I've never heard of you. What do you do? I say, well, I have a rock band. Well, that's the easiest way to say it. Now, everything we do, recording-wise or live, isn't, rock per se. But, that's just sort of, and they have, when you say that to somebody, they have their own idea of what that sounds like, so they go, oh, he must be in a band like, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Or somebody could say, well, he must be an Air Supply, who knows? It's just the thing of, if it works for you, it works for you.
You have obviously seen the huge changes in the music business over the last 45 years. And that same RIAA survey the other day came out and said that streaming revenue had finally passed the revenue for physical product. It's changed so much. How do you see a young artist being able to actually make it when streaming pays so little?
I don't know how they can. I mean, you're taking something, I mean, most of the time you have to go on the assumption that you're really not going to make much money on your music. And I think that's a horrible thing. You know, it's like, you don't ask your plumber to come over and work for free. It's a talent. It's an art form. It's a product. And I know people think that things just, materialize out of thin air. And all of a sudden there's a new Foo Fighters single or a new Madonna record or a new, Taylor Swift or whatever. But somebody had to write them. Somebody had to go in the studio and record them, and somebody, spent a lot of time on it. And they should be rewarded for that if people are into it. For a young band, I don't know how you do it these days. The internet has made it much more democratic, but at the same time, it's made it so huge that it's very easy to get lost, even though it's much easier to get out there.
Well, there's a lot more artists now that someone can record in their living room on a $300 computer.
Sure, yeah, and people's standards of what they'll accept are they're always changing, and it's always it's like the auto-tune industry. It is what it is, but that's not. It doesn't have a place in the great records that I liked and do like. Not to say that I don't hear something that's utilizes all that stuff that I like, but it's it's always been an amoeba, and it probably always will be. It's just changing, and you either roll with it or get out of the way, or just stick to your guns and preach to the choir.
What are you doing as far as all of the new media opportunities, as far as, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Periscope and so forth? Are you doing anything?
I don't utilize any of them, and it's probably to my professional detriment, but I'm a huge, I think Facebook and Twitter are the devil. I really do. It's just, I don't, I see people spending their whole lives on this stuff, and at the same time, if I have a thought, I don't want to be, I don't want it limited to 140 characters. You know what I mean?
Very true. And you see enough people that are so engrossed in it that they walk into a wall while tweeting.
Exactly. I mean, I realize it is what it is, and it's the wave of the future, and hopefully it'll come back to some sensible sort of thing. But I don't have time for it. I'd rather spend the time making a new album.
I know that obviously you in radio spend time playing classic rock. Is there any up-and-coming or current artists that you are really appreciating right now?
There's a lot. There's a lot of people out there I like. Dave Grohl and his thing. I think they do amazing stuff. I like a lot of the pop stuff. I like Taylor Swift stuff. But at the same time, I'm excited for a new Tom Waits record too, or something like that. I'm just sorry to see that so many of the people from my era don't seem to be doing it anymore, or when they do, it seems to be kind of half-hearted. Just something to have to sell at a tour or something.
Well, that's one of the reasons why, 10 years ago now, I started the VVN music site, because we only cover artists who have been recording for 20 years or more. Mm-hmm. And that leaves a lot more space to talk when people do come out with new albums, to talk about that instead of being filled up with stories on Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift and so forth.
Exactly. And, it's just... If I had all the answers about how to do this completely right and successfully, I wouldn't be holding them to myself. I've come to the conclusion that this is what I do, for better or worse, and I've been lucky enough to have an audience that at one time was real big and now isn't so big, but a lot of them have stayed with me and allow me to do different things as an artist, and I find out whether they like this direction or that direction, and it's just at this point in the game, I just want to get the music out there, and hopefully it's things that somebody will like. Because, when you got something that moves you musically, it's a great thing. Well, we've all had it. We all have our, touchstone tunes and bands and this and that, and it's a big part of our lives. And when you can maybe do that for somebody else, it's a really good feeling.
By the way, you mentioned Taylor Swift. I'm curious if you've heard the Ryan Adams version of her album that he put out this week.
I haven't heard it, but I just read a big article interview with him about it yesterday, and I thought, because I like Ryan Adams, I think he does some cool stuff. So it's kind of like, I want to hear what you do with this. That could be interesting.
I actually very much like it, but it is, in a lot of ways, Ryan Adams via the Smiths doing Taylor Swift.
Right.
And it's very, very interesting. Hey, I have one final question on your new album, and it's an important one. Where did you find the picture of the about 9-year-old smoking a cigarette with a chicken for the cover?
Isn't that a great picture? And as it says on the little note in there, no one believes me, but it is not photoshopped. I don't know. Every office situation I worked in, there's somebody that seems to be the curator of the internet, and they're always sending things around, to everybody. But there's a lady at the radio station, and one day I opened an email and there was that picture, and it just said, "Is this you? Is this you as a child?" And I just started laughing, and because I'm a smoker, and I thought, what a great picture. So I said, I went to her. I said, "Where did you find that?" And it's from the Canadian National Archives. And if you go to the Canadian National Archives, it's in this picture. It's in the midst of all these pictures of like people building homes in 1880 and building the railroad and churning butter and and all of a sudden in the middle of all these sort of let's get the country together pictures is that the kid's name's Henry. His name's on the thing, and it's from 1910. And it was just one of those where I said, this is the next album cover. I said, that's it. I mean, I just have to do it.
Yeah, every time I look at that, I have to chuckle. It's so random.
It is. It's the great thing. And if you look at it from a marketing standpoint, if people still did that, like went to a record store and browsed through the product, which I don't think they do anymore. But I mean, that would make me stop and pick it up, and if nothing else, and go like, what the hell is this? And okay, I've never heard of this guy or this band or anything, but what is this cover? So at least you got him to pick it up, and that's the thing.
Well, Michael, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk about the new album. I really wish you the best of luck with it, and also taking the time to talk a little bit about rock in general, because I always like trading stories that way.
Well, I appreciate your interest in it, and anything I can do in the future or anything, let me know, and I thank you for your support and your help on this.
Our thanks to Michael Stanley for talking with us. His great new album, And Then, will be available in October from Line Level Records. We'll be back soon with another edition of the VVN Music Podcast. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, check in at vvnmusic.com. And if you have any comments or questions about the website or this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was recorded on September 29th, 2015, and is a production of VVN Network, copyright 2015.